The rich get richer and the poor get poorer because rich people have rich habits that make them and keep them rich. Poor people have poor habits that make and keep them poor, which is why if a rich person had all their money taken away from them, they are technically at that moment what we would call broke. Broke is a financial state, poor is a way of thinking, and that person will become rich again. Good example, President Donald Trump. He was billions of dollars in debt. He was rich and he was $1 billion in debt, and then he got back rich again. All right, he can go up, down, up. Why? Because of his mindset, not because of luck. And not because his dad gave him money. Another excuse that a lot of people say, well, this person's dad gave him money. Okay, well, how do you explain how the majority of millionaires and billionaires in the United States of America are all first generation? The majority, more than half of all millionaires and billionaires in the United States of America are first generation. That is a statistical fact. And the poor get poorer because poor people have poor habits. They have poor habits of thought, they have poor habits of speech, and they have poor habits of action. That's why they're poor. And often their poor mindset was passed down to them by some poor people who came before them and the poor people that they hang around and talk to every day. And it's easier to become poor than it is to become rich. Why? Because to become poor, you don't have to do anything. You become poor by default. Why? The law of inertia. Object in motion tends to remain in motion. Object not in motion tends to remain not in motion until or unless acted upon by an outside force. It takes more energy to build momentum than it does to allow stagnation. Stagnation is allowed. Momentum is done intentionally. Combine that with the law of entropy, which states any object is always moving into a higher state of disorder and chaos, or descending into disorder and chaos. Descending, into disorder and chaos. Which means what? If you do nothing and you're not intentional about getting better, then by default, you get worse. This is a scientific law. This is the reason why there are a few people at the top of the pyramid and a whole bunch of people at the bottom, because by default, you get worse. Most people live their lives by default. That's why the bottom of the pyramid is so crowded with so many people. If you start living by default, you immediately at least go up to the second level of the pyramid. You at least can get there. So the rich get richer and the poor get poorer because of their habits, not because anything anyone is doing to them or for them. For anyone to accept this, however, you also have to accept personal responsibility. That you are where you are because of the current habits you've had up to this point. The good news is you can change your habits as soon as you become aware of them. I talked about this in my book, Work on Your Game.